Thank you so much for coming. My name is Adriana Grigsby. I am the founder and president of Turning Life On, which is a local organization that started in Concord as Concord Promise. But we now support community groups throughout the state of Massachusetts and New Hampshire and a little bit beyond. And what we do is our mission is really to change the way that people are living with technology so that we're more present and more connected offline versus online. And our goal is to bring educational events to communities so that parents and community members, including teachers and other people that work with you, feel empowered to make healthy choices around technology. And of course, we invited teenagers to be here today because we think it's important that you hear what the professionals are saying about technology and how it's impacting our lives so that you can make choices on your own as well. So tonight we have Derek Lazar, who is the head of school at Penn. Rachel Kramer is a local psychologist here in Concord, who's amazing. Many of you probably know her. And Lady is a CCHS senior. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves a little bit more? We also passed out, when you registered, you should have gotten a note card and a little pencil. If you have any questions, if you don't mind just jotting the questions down on that note card. And somebody will collect them and bring them up here and I'll sift through and make sure we get those questions answered. No questions off limits. I will scan and make sure it's appropriate, but please feel free to ask any question that you have. We're also recording this event, so it'll be available to watch after. So we'll just get started. Derek, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So nice to see all of you. As Adrian mentioned, my name is Derek Bunasar. I'm the head of school at Penn, which is an all-boys day school on Monument Street right here in town. We serve students in grades 4 through 9. Our enrollment is approximately 300 students. I've been in my current role for this is my 8th year as head and my 31st overall at the school. I was hired as a teacher coach advisor back in the mid-90s and I've held a variety of different positions along the way. Prior to my arrival at Penn, I taught in a boarding school in Connecticut, so I have about 33 years total of work and education under my belt. I don't have all the answers. I still have lots of questions myself. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We're chatting up here a little bit about sort of the topics that can fill a room, technology and how it intersects in the lives of students and where it's all headed and circle one of those topics. So pleasure to be here and to join you. And I look forward to both the conversation and the Q&A when we arrive at that point. So I'm going to pass it to Rachel, and then I think we have some question prompts that we'll start with and go from there.
So again, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Rachel Kramer. I am a clinical psychologist with a private practice in Concord. I've been in practice for a long time. It's going to be 30 years in January. And my practice is split about between sort of 2 different parts. About half of my time I spend working just with parents, and I meet with them to talk about a whole range of different topics. Often I do them once a month just to consult around questions about sleep, behavior, child behavior management, and certainly talking about kids and pets. And the other half of my practice is working directly with children, and currently that age range is those children between about 6 and 23. I also am on the board of trustees at Penn, and I'm a member of the advisory board of ThinkKid, which is one of the organizations that organized this evening. And I have 3 young adult children of my own whom I raised in Concord. Now growing and developing. Sure. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lily. I just want a correction for everyone here. But I'm a representative for the Student Advisory Board of ThinkKid. Yeah, I'm just here to show out perspectives.
Great. So we wanted to center this conversation around the book, The Anxious Generation. We had Jean Twenge do a presentation last month, and hopefully many of you saw that. If not, the recording is still available on the Turning Life On website. If you just go to the Growing Up Well tab at the top, you can watch the video. But tonight we're going to focus on the Anxious Generation. So Jonathan Haidt has been studying this topic with Jean Twenge for many years, and he put forth 4 norms in his book, which we desperately needed. I've been working in this space since 2017. We haven't had a ton of guidance. It feels like he has really made some breakthroughs here with the 4 norms. So the first one is no smartphones before high school. Kids should wait until at least 14 or 9th grade before owning a smartphone. But he does allow some leeway for a basic phone or smartphone or smartwatch for communication. So that means like texting, calling, FaceTime is his first norm. His second one is to delay social media until at least age 16. This gives teens' brains and social skills some time to develop. So delaying social media helps prevent anxiety, addiction, and social comparison. We know that a lot happens in the middle school years, as Derek will talk about, and we just need to give kids a little bit more time to develop those skills so they can manage technology on their own. Another one of his norms is phone-free schools. That's something that we've been working on at Concord, and something that Fenn has done a really good job at implementing in their school. And then the fourth one is more unsupervised play and independence, and encouraging kids to explore, socialize, and problem solve offline to build confidence, autonomy, and resilience. So Derek, do you have restricted phone use at Fenn? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, you have your yonder
Show and tell.
show us. So how has restricting phone use during the school day benefited students, and how can families and schools reframe the conversation to one of restriction and fear to one of skill building and balance, including the benefits of phone-free schools?
Great. Thank you for that thoughtful question. So we made a very important decision going into last year, so about 2 years ago. And the impetus behind the decision really had 2 layers. Coming out of COVID in 2020 and 2021, we were noticing that our students, and when I refer to we, I'm referring to the leadership team, our faculty and staff, we were noticing that our students' SEL skills and academic or social emotional learning skills were lagging a little bit. What I mean by that is their resilience, their ability to confidently make eye contact, their ability to make small talk between classes, between sessions, sort of some of those soft tissue moments. Those were lagging a little bit. And we considered that there was no school in 2020, that summer, and what have you. And then the onset of smartphones and smartwatches in their lives, which are devices that command so much of their attention. We made the decision as a team to work on a yonder policy. I brought them with me because people are always wondering, what do these look like? So this is a yonder pouch, and it is made of durable canvas. And what happens is, when boys arrive to school at 8 o'clock, their first commitment of the day is shortly thereafter, and it's an advisor period. And the advisor supervises the boys as their phones, if they bring them, go into these pouches. And they snapshot, they lock shut. They're allowed to hold on to the pouch throughout the day, and you usually put them in their backpack, to be honest. And away they go for the day. And at the end of the day, this is a device that demagnetizes. So you simply put you can hear that, and it unclicks, and at the end of the day, they unyonder, pull their phone out, and away they go. And it's made a big, big difference in the life of our school and in the lives of the adults and the students. The faculty would tell you that the students are much more attentive, they're much more focused, they're not distracted any longer by the vibrations that are going on in their pocket. I read a statistic at some point recently that middle school students receive as many as 200 notifications a day on their phone. That is an enormous, enormous number. You can imagine how distracting that would be for a 6th or 7th or 8th grader to have literally 200 different notifications and vibrations during the day. Perhaps some of the most important testimonials of all are from the boys themselves. So we issue an annual climate survey that all of our students fill out, and some of the questions focus on the implementation of the Yonder pouches. And they themselves have expressed that they're feeling less anxious, they're feeling less stressed, they're feeling less preoccupied, because everybody's doing it, so they're not worried as much about what they're missing. And I think that's incredibly important testimony. Much fewer trips to the bathroom, too, than the old days, when they had their phones in their pocket. They weren't allowed to use them, but they had them in their pocket, and many lengthy trips to the bathroom, for instance. And so a massive decrease in all of that. And we've seen an uptick in improvement in some of those social emotional skills that I talked about. Students are more skilled and more confident at connecting, at talking, at filling in those in-between moments in a good and healthy way. And so my only regret truly is that we didn't do this earlier. I really wish we had, but we live and we learn and we move forward. But the Yonder program at Penn is here, and it's here to stay. So lots more to talk about, I know. Is there a second part of the question?
No, I think you got it. So you're really, I like the way that you're not talking about the harms of social media and the harms of having a phone, but all the things that kids benefit from when they don't have their phones. Because I think that that's something that we should be focusing on as parents, and we should be thinking about as kids, is what are the things that we can benefit? How do we grow? How do our kids grow when they're not bombarded with notifications, when they're not spending extended amounts of time in the bathroom and missing out on classwork, and not distracted by their phones? They're getting all of those benefits of not only social emotional learning, but I'm sure that they're doing better, performing better in class, and
All those things.
more engaged with their classmates, and doing better on tests, and preparing for their futures better. So that's
Two
great.
other quick points I would make are that some of our biggest student skeptics, as you might imagine, were our oldest students. Those are our 8th graders and our 9th graders. It took them a little longer to come around. They're the ones that have come around the most and the furthest, to the point where they're actually leaving their phones at home now, which is perfect. And they're not even bothering bringing them because they don't need them. No, it's not all of them, but that's a lot of them. And the other thing that they would say, and this is for the parents in the room, and I am a parent too, my children are a little bit older, but they were still part of this, is that part of the benefit of having the phone in the Yonder pouch all day is that they won't be receiving so many text messages from their parents during the day. So, from many of them. So you're part of the problem too. I was teaching a class once, and somebody knew that I was returning the test that day, and his phone was blowing up.
Yeah,
And I said to him, who is that? He said, it's my mom's one, so I know.
I was asking dialing Mason, when he was in his 8th grade facilities, his 8th grade Latin class at Penn, and my phone was in my bag, and I was just calling him over and over and over again, but totally by accident, but
This was on purpose.
distracting, so it could happen either way. And then what about smartwatches? Do you put smartwatches
We do.
in your pouch?
Smartwatches go in the pouches as well. And I just want to share this, there is a difference. So this is a fully magnetized one. For students that are suffering from an emergent or acute medical issue, we actually have that Velcro version. This is one of the concerns that our families had about this. We have several students at Penn that are type 1 diabetic, and so their Yonder pouch is Velcro, and it's a little bit more on our system because we actually put these away during the day, so students aren't demagnetized over the course of the day. They're collected in the morning and put away, they're put out as the day goes on at the end of the day. But for students who do need their phone with their smartwatch to check their numbers, so to speak, they will receive a school-issued Velcro Yonder pouch. And again, these are the more secure locked ones.
That's Great.
well. So it's a great program. I would tell anyone that would be willing to listen to consider implementing this at school. It's a no-brainer, and as I said a few minutes ago, we should be done sooner.
Awesome. Dr. Kramer, how is technology reshaping what it means for kids and teens to grow up well in a digital age?
An important question. When I think about, so what does it mean to grow up well? The first thing that comes up for me is physical and emotional safety, but I think this question needs to go beyond that. So as a clinical psychologist, I would say growing up well really means developing skills and abilities that are going to support psychological well-being throughout the whole lifespan. And so by that I mean things like emotional regulation skills, distress tolerance, emotional literacy, social communication, empathy, self-awareness, problem-solving skills, independence, self-advocacy. When I think about those skills, I know I listed a lot of skills that I sort of tried to write down for myself on my notes, what are the top psychological, sort of social emotional well-being skills, and I jotted down a bunch of them. When I look at that list of skills, I think most of these really are developed through various different types of in-person interactions. So they happen through taking risks, through navigating social relationships and those ups and downs, through exploring the world, exploring different materials, through making mistakes and solving problems. And I think, what we know to be true is that each day has a finite number of hours, and so the hours that children are spending online are hours that they are not able to do things offline, and to be able to engage in all of those activities that I was just talking about that build all these types of psychological and social emotional skills. So I guess that I would say the important message here is really one of balance. None of us have chosen to live in a completely off the grid way, right? We're here in Concord, Massachusetts. Many of you are probably from Concord, some people might be from nearby, but we're not living in the most remote part of the woods in northern Maine, where perhaps there isn't big cell service. So what we want to do is teach children to learn to balance online and offline activities, and to give them opportunities to engage in the real world and to make those compelling so that they feel as though they want to be doing that. And it feels maybe more compelling, or at least as compelling as some of the online options that are available to them.
Great, thank you. Laylee, from your perspective, what do young people need most to navigate technology in a way that supports their growth and well-being? So Dr. Kramer just gave us some great suggestions on what we do need. So how do we support you, and what do you need? What do you think young people need?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think for the most part, spaces like this where education can be increased. I think that most teenagers understand that spending long hours on social media is probably not a good decision, but it's also just kind of the climate and the norm for teenagers that you kind of have to have a social life and interact with other people. You can spend a lot of time on your phone, which is obviously has negative implications. But I think for teenagers to understand not just that, oh, you probably shouldn't spend all day on your phone, to really understand what parts of social media are negative and how that really impacts you. I think a lot of times there's a disconnect between adults and teenagers, and adults being like, oh, like, just get off your phone. You probably should just get off your phone. But actually understanding how being on social media changes the way you see yourself and the way you see the world, I think would be really impactful for all adolescents.
So Dr. Kramer, do you want to follow up with answering that question? I know we're going off script a little bit here, putting you on the spot, but
So, what question am I answering?
so how does social media negatively impact kids?
I probably could give actually just an
Yeah.
answer to that as I could. Let's start with social comparison, right? So adolescence is a time that one of the developmental tasks is developing a sense of identity. And in an online environment, that sense of identity is shaped by people who are spending hours on just a perfect exact video, putting on makeup and adjusting lighting, or maybe taking 12 different takes before they find the perfect video that they want to post online. And if I'm a teenager with my developing brain and I'm at home watching that, and that looks so perfect and like it's not something I could ever achieve on my own, I think that can start to feel really depleting. And I think it makes it very difficult to independently develop one's own identity when you're surrounded by all of these images of perfection or messages about all sorts of things. I don't want to be too scary.
Yeah.
You know, messages about bodies needing to look a certain way, messages about you know, people of different genders needing to behave a certain way or have certain attitudes. It's very compelling. Well, what we know is that tech companies, in developing their algorithms, studied addiction models and developed algorithms that were designed so that people want to continue to watch. And so that's what you and your friends are all up against, right? And we know that as adults because we all see ourselves how compelling it is to be watching one video and then another video is suggested to you. It's really hard to put that down because, again, it was designed to be able to give you those constant hits of dopamine and to keep you watching. So I think when you ask about what are the negatives, what are the potential pitfalls of social media, they're present for all of us, teenagers and adults alike, and the difference is that for teenagers they're happening in a developing brain and an individual who is developing an identity. And so that those struggles become just more intensified.
And what do you think, Laylee, about how parents should talk to their kids about technology? What if you, I mean, I'm sure you have a great relationship with your parents, but if you were to give parents your advice of how to talk with their kids about technology, what would you say to the parents here?
Yeah, I would say that in order to have like a more productive conversation, just to be really open about how much social media is in our lives. I think in a perfect world it would be great for adolescents to put their phone down and just stop texting or whatever, but to really understand that have a social life, to have friends, even just be in a group project and use your phone is really important because I think I can totally see as a parent being like, oh my gosh, like my kids spend like 5 hours on her phone. That's like really concerning, but really like to be involved in anything regarding teenage activities, you really need to be on social media. So just have open conversations about sort of the way in which teenagers need to interact with social media and survive and have a social life.
Great, thank you. Yeah, of course.
I really love that answer. Because to me, I think as parents, what we want to do is have an ongoing series of really low-key, low-stakes conversations. So that you're not just jumping in when you see something that's a problem or that's a fire on fire, but that as part of the natural conversation over the course of a regular week, periodically you're just talking about things that people saw online, or things that you read about, something, maybe it's something scary that you read about. Maybe it's something that you watched together in a show, some bullying that was taking place using social media, and you have a conversation about that. If you can do that in an ongoing and low-key way, I think it's going to feel more supportive of teenagers rather than combative.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can I build on that?
Yeah, of course.
It might be somewhat redundant, but I agree with Laylee and Dr. Kramer that, you know, as much as we can avoid making it punitive and focus more on our ability to collaborate and partner with them in productive ways around conversations, I think is a pathway to increased success. I do believe location really matters. Where is your child interacting with his or her, their device? Are they in the bedroom? Are they in the TV room? Are they in a playroom? Are they in the kitchen? I think that really matters. And I also believe, and this can really be in the spirit of that collaboration, is setting some clear boundaries and some real clear limits about usage and length thereof. And so where I've seen some families have some true success with this is, say, it's a weekend day or a summer day or a vacation day, kind of chunking the day out a little bit. So, you know, let's talk about what your plan today is from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then let's look at 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. before dinner, and then how you might choose to spend your time, from 7 to 10, something like that. And then within each, say, 3-hour increment, allow a certain amount of time for social media or texting, but also building some other activities that involve exercise and fresh air and family time, walking the dog, or whatever it may be, reading, that just introduces some variety. And so, you know, it is a plug. to be, involved in this and good partners in the conversation. I think those are pathways to increase levels of success and buy-in.
And I have older kids too. My kids are 19, 17, 15, and 12. But with my older kids, we've always had boundaries with technology, and I think that that's really important that we listen to kids and we're empathetic and we keep the conversation going and we ask them, but we're still parents, and I think it's okay for us to set boundaries. And so some of the boundaries that I've set with my kids, which I think is really, really important, is downtime. And I started that in middle school, and I continue it now. And actually, my son, my older kids are in boarding school, and my son, who's now a junior, called me last year as a sophomore and said, I'm getting up at 7, my downtime goes off at 7, I'm spending like 20 minutes on social media, and I don't want to do that. Would you change my downtime to go off at 7:30? So as you're having these, if you're setting up boundaries and you're having these conversations with your kids about how is social media impacting you, what is it getting in the way of, how does it make you feel at certain different points in the day, they will start to figure out on their own, they'll start to make those connections, they'll be able to self-reflect, and then as they get older, they'll be able to make better decisions for themselves, and that's really what we want. But we can't just expect them in middle school to be able to figure out that when I'm up in the middle of the night on my phone, I feel tired and crappy the next day. It's hard, difficult for them to make those connections.
And it's not necessarily their fault. I mean,
Right.
if you want to get into the neurology of it, Dr. Kramer can probably support this. Their frontal lobes are not fully developed. They're not even close to being fully developed. And so that's right.
Maybe even 30.
And it's getting higher. It used to be 25, now it's 20 or 30. But their judgment center is undeveloped, but their reward center is very hungry, voraciously hungry. And the dopamine hits that Dr. Kramer was talking about are real. And I think part of that partnership and part of that collaboration, working alongside them to make sure that they are making good decisions and smart decisions, I believe is really wise. And I will put in a plug, especially if you are a parent of an elementary or middle school student, which is sort of my world, but maybe even into the early high school. I do believe that you should be aware of your child's digital footprint. I know I personally hear a lot of parents say, I don't check my kid's phone. I'm here to tell you you should.
Yeah.
I really do believe strongly that you should. I know the students in the audience right now are probably not real happy with me saying that. And I know maybe some of the parents, I'm not here to tell you how to parent, but that's not my place. But I do believe that there's real value, real opportunity in knowing where your child is spending his or her or their time on their phone. I've just seen some really good kids make really bad decisions. And with a little more oversight, a little more parental control, that probably would have been avoided.
Well, and not being sneaky about it, it's not, I think the
Yes.
suggestion is to do let your child know, is when you get the phone, and a lot of people will say parents have the most power before they give the child a phone. And so, evidently they haven't done it yet. So make it frequent that, okay, the plan is that I'm going to be checking in, I'm going to look at your texts, I'm going to look at whatever, whatever other comments you have, and I'll be doing that periodically. And one of the things that we say to children is imagine what it would feel like if your grandparent was reading this before you type it out or before you hit send. And I think if you can live in the back of your child's brain as, oh, whatever I'm writing, my parent may see, that may help to avert some of these really tricky situations that they're referring to.
And we have a great family media plan on the Turning Life On website. If you're looking for an agreement to write up with your kids, we have one on there with a whole script of why we have the rules that we have. So if you're looking for something, you can check that out. So I didn't mention this in the beginning, but Massachusetts State Representative Simon Talbot was supposed to be here tonight. They had a vote at 7, so he wasn't able to get out of Boston. He is working on legislation in the House. He's on the Education Committee. He's working on legislation on phone-free schools. because he recognizes the importance of, to Derek's point, of getting phones out of school so that kids can focus on education. He feels like as taxpayers, it's our financial responsibility to provide distraction-free environment for students to learn. So you can also keep an eye on what he's doing, and I'm planning to interview him, and then we'll send out a video so he can tell you guys a little bit more about that. So moving on, so Dr. Kramer, SEL teaches self-awareness, self-management, and responsible decision-making, all skills that are key to managing technology use. How can these skills help teens develop a healthy internal compass around tech use?
Okay, so this is a great question, and I referred earlier to the idea that the fact that algorithms and video games and social media are built to be able to keep people watching, to be able to keep that dopamine running. If you refer to SEL, so social and emotional learning, so a lot of social and emotional learning curriculums in schools focuses on things like building self-awareness, building emotion regulation, behavioral regulation. And what we want to help teenagers, children to do is to turn the spotlight of their attention to their internal states. How do I figure out when I'm hungry, when I'm thirsty, when I'm tired, when something's making me irritable, when something's not just feeling like making me uncomfortable, or much more complicated but really common online, when something is very compelling, such that I feel like I can't look away, but also makes me feel kind of horrified or frightened or disgusted or ashamed. And so I think what I like about strong social emotional learning curricula is I think they help children learn to distinguish between physiological states, between different emotional states, and assist them in building this kind of self-awareness that can support more balanced decision making around how am I feeling right? When I stay on TikTok for 40 minutes and then get off my phone, how do I feel at the end of that 40 minutes? Is that feeling good or not? The other thing a strong social emotional learning curriculum can do is to teach children offline, non-screen strategies for managing challenging emotions. So if I'm feeling angry or sad or lonely, what are the skills that I can use to be able to manage those emotions other than just hopping on the phone and sort of falling into my phone. And I think what's great about a curriculum that's being presented to a whole classroom is that it really touches that concept of common humanity, that people aren't in things alone. So in the classroom, if you're having conversations about how you cope with loneliness, or about how you manage your emotions when you're really upset with your parents, I think it helps children to feel as though they're not the only ones struggling with that issue. To know their classmates are looking for tools to manage these emotions as well. So there's a real sense of community involved in that social emotional learning as well.
Great. Derek, how can families and schools help teens develop self-regulation around screens and social media using strategies such as boundaries in ways that are firm, supportive, and empowering?
That's a great.
Kind of a little bit of what we've already talked
Yeah,
about.
we talked a little bit about that, so I'm not sure I have other words to put to it, but I'm a massive advocate for not positioning technology as all bad, and the only focus on it is a punitive one, and that's come up a little bit in some other comments today. Harnessing it for the good, being able to articulate the good aspects of it in the ways in which it can serve us well. But on top of that, I sort of reiterate my points that I think limiting the amount of time one spends on the device is important. Setting clear boundaries. I'm speaking to the adults now with respect. I think remember you're in control here. I mean, it's a little bit like giving your child the keys to a really fast car the day that they get their license. That's not a poor analogy. And so I think remembering that you are in control and staying in control and providing the oversight, I believe is really important. And then I think location of usage, and then where's your child's phone at night? And again, I'm speaking, my world is 4th through 9th, and at least at FEN, based on sort of the information that we're working with, is the vast majority of our 4th and 5th graders do not possess an iPhone or a smartwatch. On the other hand, the majority of our 6th through 9th graders do. And so we're really, I think, kind of targeting our digital literacy and our digital citizenship programming and, you know, the work that we do, the education that we do with our students is really centered around those age groups. But, you know, I think asking your child where that phone is overnight is important as well. Because they will be up late, they will be on it, they will go down the Instagram rabbit hole and, you know, on a weeknight up until 1 or 2 in the morning, and that leads to a poor night's sleep and, you know, a start of a dysregulated day, and all begins to snowball. But I think they can get harder and collaborative too.
Yeah. Laylee, what changes would you like to see in the way that teens interact with technology?
Yeah, I feel like you already talked about this a little bit, but I think just being more conscious of how you are online, I think it's definitely harder when you're a little bit younger and you're in middle school and you're just on your phone, but I think to try to like support your child understanding that social media is not as good for you, understanding that you spend 2 hours on TikTok and Instagram and how it makes you feel about yourself and how it makes you feel about others. I really like what people were saying earlier about having kind of a partnership. I feel like growing up, I felt like obviously my parents and my parents, we were kind of going through it together. And I think being a teenager, especially social media, can be very isolating or alone in the room when you're seeing basically the whole world and it's just you. So I think just overall to know that you have parents that support you over what you're going through, even though sometimes it is difficult.
It's great.
And just to get really concrete, I'm a big fan of concrete scripts. So what that script might sound like is something like, we have a problem I want us to try and solve together. We've been getting a lot of arguments about your phone, and I think we need to figure out a solution to this problem. And to sit down and really be a problem-solving team. And it doesn't mean that your child, what Derek said before, it doesn't mean your child's the one sort of, you know, setting the rules. But I think we want to listen to what your child has to say and hear their opinion and take it into account. And also take into account all the information we have about the books and obviously the private folks should gather and things like that. But if you approach it as we're a team, we're going to solve this together, maybe we're going to really, it's like a problem-solving exercise at work. We're going to generate lists of solutions, we're going to write them on a whiteboard, we're going to pick a couple of the solutions to try, we're going to see how we can measure how well we're doing, and then 2 weeks later we'll meet again and check in and say, how did this go? Was it a good set of rules? Did it work in terms of achieving goals and achieving my goals? But that's just a really concrete way that you might want to approach that question of how you're working together to be able to set some boundaries around properties.
That's great. You answered my next question. Did you know that? Yeah, my next question was, what are the most effective ways to help families set norms that are firm but not shaming? And you just kind of went into that. I think it's something else that I've done a lot of over the last, 8 years that I've been working in this space, because we haven't always had concrete research on the impacts of phones and social media on kids. It's been kind of this, maybe it's causal, but maybe it's just coincidence, and no one can really come forward and say, what are the true impacts. But what we do know is we know about child development, and I think Dr. Kramer talked a little bit about this, and we know what kids need and what they crave at different ages and stages of their lives. So in elementary school, just basically kids need to be playing outside with their friends. They need to be exploring the natural world. And so if you talk with your kids about and you think about what are the needs that they have, that's a time when kids should be spending a lot of time in the physical world. And as they get into middle school, that's a time when they're really connecting with friends, they're gaining some independence, they're separating from their parents a little bit, but they still need a lot of guidance. And so that's why we say it's a great time to maybe introduce phones and face calling and FaceTime. There's a couple, I just learned of a few neighborhood movements in Concord of these tin can movements where neighborhoods are getting together and they're all buying tin cans and they're programming. It's just like an old-fashioned phone that connects to the wall, and you have to use an app to program phone numbers that can cut incoming phone numbers. And so they're programming each other's phone numbers into the tin can phones, and kids are calling each other and communicating with each other and making plans to get together. And that's totally developmentally appropriate in middle school, and then as kids get into high school, that's a great time to use as a launching pad to start introducing an internet browser and then social media, one app at a time. So those are the things that we recommend as kids get older. That's more developmentally appropriate. So if you're thinking about, okay, like where are we, what are we doing? Those are some good guidelines.
Can I offer a little bit more?
Yeah.
It's never too late to review with your child the goals behind the phone. And my guess is that the majority of you are probably paying a monthly bill or yearly bill or whatever it is. That may not be the case in all cases, but for most families, it is. And I think that gives you a certain right, in my view, and a certain amount of control to sort of set a clear boundary. But it's never too late to review. Usually the impetus behind providing a phone to your middle school student is really rooted in safety. We want you to be safe and comfortable. We want to be able to reach you. We want to be able to know where you are. And I think always leading with that makes sense. But also be realistic about the other usages and the other places that they will go with their phone and on their phone. I think being realistic about it is a really sensible approach. But review with them the purpose behind it. What your expectations are, and what your goals are, and why those goals are important to you. I wouldn't be afraid if they were really struggling to stay within the confines of those goals and expectations. Shut the thing off for a little while. Take it away. Tough love is a good approach. We've done it with our children. They'll get them to sit up pretty straight pretty quickly when that thing gets turned off or taken away or what have you. And it can be a learning moment. It's punitive, of course, but it's really more about redrawing the lines and resetting expectations so that it's not as stressful as it can be sometimes at home around all these things.
Oh boy.
That's what you're rolling in, huh?
Oh my gosh. All right. I'm just gonna go straight to these questions because I think that we're probably gonna cover a lot of what we're already talking about. Okay, so in a phone-free school, how would you make sure people aren't bringing their phones? How do you make sure they're not using burners or hiding them and saying they left them at home?
Great question. I wouldn't be representing it appropriately and accurately if I said that we have all the answers to all the questions. And so, it's an honor system, obviously, and it's all done under the supervision of an adult in the morning. So all of our students are broken up into advisor groups of 5 to 10 or 12 students, depending on their age. So the adult in the room, literally, I know there's some 10 parents in the audience tonight, thank you for coming. The adult oversees the installation of the phone right into the yonder pouch. Are there boys that are bringing in kind of an alternative or burner? Possibly, truthfully, in a year and 3 months now. We haven't been aware of it. We haven't seen that. We haven't had to deal with that. So they do seem to be towing the line on that. But we always have our head on a swivel to try to make sure that's not happening. But they have approached this collaboration with us in an honest way.
Lately, and I just want to add to that, we are always advocating for phone-free schools because we do know that it makes a difference. There is never going to be 100% compliance with any rule that you have in school, but it sends a message that we care about this and we think it's important that kids spend a day in a distraction-free environment. So it's important whether you have 100% compliance or not. All right, Laylee, you mentioned that you were on your phone because of phone free?
Yeah,
CC Agents.
well, at CC, we're supposed to put our phones, we have those little cabinets, it's similar to that, but we put it at the start of every class and just take it again. I think they're definitely a lot less effective, because not every teacher really cares if they put it in there, and you can take it out and go to the bathroom and all sorts of stuff, so the rules are definitely a little bit more relaxed. I think most of the group projects, like, when it's really needed, is at home, because you're usually in class with a group. So I don't think it would make that much difference, other than what you were saying, like, there would be less bathroom breaks, and people would probably pay more attention.
So are you saying the benefits would be
Yeah.
positive? Where's Dr. Hunter? Let's give this girl a meeting. All right, I don't want to bombard you with too many questions. Let's see. Okay, Dr. Kramer, how do you get the kids to want to put their phones down, take a break, reduce screen time? Parents can only manage or do so much, but the motivation to do that needs to come from the kids themselves. How do we convince them, especially the older ones who have had unlimited access to the Wi-Fi?
So, how do you make them happy? I don't think that's actually, I wouldn't set that as the goal. It's how are you gonna sort of sit with them and help them go through a period of not being so happy about the fact that there's a new rule or their rule is changed at home. And I get it, it's really hard. It's hard to have a disappointed or an angry child in your house. And if you really believe that this is something that's important, that your child cannot be, let's say, using their phone at night, that I think it's probably worth, as I said, seeing them through that experience of distress, period of frustration. That we saw, it really makes good sense, and that's, we want them to learn the skill of distress tolerance, we learn that really at home, because it's easier to do that when it's in the context of a loving environment. And, so if a child is really frustrated and is feeling like they're scream or throw things, okay, well, go back there, prisoner falls, and, so I hear that you're really frustrated, and not that you need school days, I think it's really frustrated. And that's kind of a bottom line that a parent might need to come to.
Yeah. All right, Derek. How are you thinking about how to manage social and emotional risk posed by AI? Are you implementing AI, and how is that?
So, gosh, such a great
I
question.
know.
Tough one. We're evolving so fast. We're doing our best, as are all schools, I believe, to keep up with it all. We did arrive entering this school year with an AI sort of philosophy and approach. And it is difficult to monitor, as you might imagine. Our expectation at FEN is that students not use, unless they're given explicit faculty teacher permission, they are not to use AI to enhance any assignment. In the event that there is some permission granted and given, usually that's done in class with some oversight so that it can be channeled in the right way. One of the most effective ways that we feel we've been able to monitor and manage this is around written expression. And that's where students are tending to use AI to either create incomplete or enhance their assignment. And so we have focused on our students with their written expression sort of assessments in class as opposed to at home. It doesn't take long to figure out when a student has done something at home that has an AI overlay to it. It doesn't look anything, sound like anything, read anything like what they're producing in class. And so it's really a matter of oversight, and that's how we've approached it. So clear policy, hoping that it's on, the boys are buying in and on board, and try to oversight as much as we can at school. Sorry.
Do you want to add anything?
I think we go back to that Jonathan Pincus about not allowing social media until 16. And I just was reading an article saying that you've got to add, some AI companion apps to that
Yes.
as well.
I agree. Yeah. and maybe even older, maybe 18. Yeah. I think we've been doing a lot of work around AI and talking to legislation about putting together guidelines. I was just warned that we adopted social media pretty quickly because we thought that it would make things better for us, and that hasn't really played out. And so I would just be really cautious and thinking critically about the way that we're implementing AI, the way that we're using AI, and just really aware of the risks associated with AI, like cognitive offloading, and just really think hard about how we as adults and how we're exposing our kids to AI.
And again, ongoing, low-key conversations so that AI
Yeah.
can be part of that as well.
Derek, where's the best place to be on your phone? You know, phones are right in the center, but where do you think it should be?
I'm a big fan of wherever you gather as a family. For many families, I'm assuming this is the literal location of,
Yeah.
not where you go
Yeah.
on your phone.
I think so.
Okay. You can answer either way, but I'm a big fan of whatever is the most communal space in your home, either your kitchen or your TV room. For us, the way we function as a family, we're all together. We choose the kitchen, and so I advocate for that. Do we always enforce that? No, we don't. Our son is a 10th grader at home now, siblings in college, likes to be in his room on his phone and try to get him out of there and downstairs and put it down and watch the game together. One of the things that he really likes to do is if we're watching a Celtics game or a Patriots game, and I don't mind this necessarily, he likes to follow along, he likes to track the stats. I like to watch the game. He likes to sort of watch the game and watch the stats accumulate on the box score. So that's an adjustment for us a little bit, but I don't mind that. But I also, encourage him to put it down. Let's watch the game together and let's talk about the plays together and celebrate really well and commiserate when they don't do well and those kinds of things. But that's how he uses it. But I'm a big fan of the communal space when someone can have an eye on things. I think that's the best approach.
The same person asked, any good book recs for teens getting off their phones that's more readable for teens? And then somebody said, just a plug, that the Kid-Teen Companion book to the Anxious Generation called The Amazing Generation by Jonathan Haidt and Catherine Price will be out soon, meant to encourage kids and give them skills in these topics. So hopefully that answers that question. We have an audience member answer a question they didn't even know existed up here. All right, a lot of questions about being socially left out, socially isolated. What are the implications of waiting to give teens social media? How do you navigate Snapchat when social media is not recommended until 16? Yet it's how 13 and 14-year-olds talk and communicate with each other. There's definitely that fear that, social isolation fear, or getting socially left out, or those negative implications. Do you want
I think we have to be realistic, right? That's an aspirational goal that teens have social media until they're 16. But currently in our community, that is not what's happening. And to me, that you want your child to have enough access on their device that they can make social plans, that they can connect with peers. That is really important. And again, right now in our community, it's not the case people can wait till they're 16 to have Snapchat or whatever it is to tell us. But, so I think you have to, as a parent, kind of take a breath, right? And say, all right, yes, I wish that were true. And maybe if I had a younger child, maybe that would be true for them, but they won't get social media until they're 16. But for right now, I'm really going to think about what my child needs to be able to make plans with peers, to be able to connect with peers. If there's a period of time that they're going to be apart for whatever reason, somebody's homesick, somebody's got a broken leg, somebody's going on a family trip for a while that wants to stay in touch. But they need to use social media to stay in touch. And then it's, what are the parameters? What are the hours that it's allowed or not allowed? what are good times when we're on vacation that we're gonna say, you can be on the phone versus we're gonna say, no, we're putting those down, we're gonna go explore or be on the beach and just be all together having fun.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's hard to, so I would just add two things. What can we do as a community in Concord to make better choices for our kids together? And how do we support each other down that road? And we tried to do this with Concord Promise several years ago. We've kind of abandoned the promise part of turning life on, but I think it's definitely a conversation that we should be having amongst our kids, friends, the parent groups, because it is important, and if we can get together and make some rules around it, then that would be great. But to Dr. Kramer's point, we don't want our kids to feel left out and isolated. What I have done with my kids, just speaking from experience, is we've set up those parameters. I talked about downtime, which I think is very, very important. And then we also set up limits for Snapchat. And my kids will burn through those limits, and then they will say, hey, and they're in boarding school now, and they're junior and sophomore, and they will text me and say, hey, I need more time on Snapchat so I can make plans with my friends. And depending on the time of day it is, the day of the week that it is, we'll talk about, like, do you really need to make plans? It's 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night, you should be going to bed. You can wait until tomorrow when you see your friends and you can make plans then. You know, is it Saturday at 3:30 and you need more time on Snap? Like, sure, I'll give you more time on Snap, but it's a conversation that we have, and we've gotten to that point because we've talked and had all these little mini conversations over the years about what the risks are, and talked about how did that kind of self-reflection piece and how is social media impacting you and how is Snapchat impacting you when you're on it. And I think also giving kids one app at a time. So if it's Snapchat that they want, that's great. I don't see kids communicating really over Instagram and TikTok. So maybe you're not giving them that, but you're giving them Snapchat. Another thing that we did for my older daughter when she was in middle school, because all of her friends had TikTok, and I wasn't ready to give that to her, is I downloaded TikTok on my phone. She would forward videos to me that her friends would send to her, and we would watch them together. She would be able to access them on my phone. So she wasn't getting left out, but she wasn't having this unlimited access to TikTok. So it's just a way that we were able to compromise on that. Yeah. Lily, do you want to add? Oh, go ahead there.
Sure.
Yeah, social isolation.
Yeah, well, one I'm just feeling very empathetic for all of the parents. Oh my gosh, I've never thought about this stuff before. But yeah, I feel like that was definitely a really big part of social media, which is awful because so much of our lives surround it, and you're definitely like, I'll even be out with friends and you're on your phone and you're like, other people are out with other friends and then thinking about that. So it's definitely very complicated. But I will say, for a period, I deleted like all social media for like 6 months, and sort of through that process, I was like, oh, like my really real true friends would contact me on iMessage, because it's easier than just like text somebody in Snapchat because like their icon pops up or whatever. But I think through that process, I kind of got a deeper appreciation for my true friends and people who would go out of their way to invite me to different things.
And I've seen that with my kids too. Their friends know that they have Snapchat limits, so they will text them on iMessage, and they set like, you're not responding, I'm gonna go over to iMessage and text you there because they know that they have limits. And hopefully we want all of our kids to get to that point. I know it takes a while to get there, but. Okay, Lily, another question for you. You answered it. What do you think is worse for teenagers nowadays? The anxiety of missing out if you're not on social media, like if you don't have social media, or the solitude of not getting enough human connection? I guess it's those two. And what would you ask your high school to help with this would help students with this conflict? So the anxiety of missing out if you are not on social media, what do you think is worse for teenagers nowadays? The anxiety of missing out if you are not on social media, or the solitude of not getting enough human connections?
I think that there's lots of other ways other than social media to find human connections. I think that sometimes it's better to be left out. Like sometimes, like when I deleted social media, like I would know everything, and obviously, like that's a very hard thing to do to not be there, but also to know that you're with the right people who will support you without social media. I think that, I don't know, it made me realize a lot of things about kind of who I was spending my time with. And obviously that's a really hard decision to make when the easier thing is like, oh, I want to be left out, I want to be invited to everything. But I think sometimes, like, for yourself, maybe you shouldn't be invited to everything, you should be choosing very carefully which everything.
How old were you when you deleted social media for 6 months? You're a senior now, do you remember when that was?
I did it last year.
Last year as a junior.
Yeah.
And how did you, what did your high school do to support students?
Yeah. So I think that so much of social media is social and really not related to school. Yeah, I don't think that there's that much of a correlation.
Do you think it would be easier if, it would have been easier if you deleted social media for 6 months? Do you think it would have been easier if at school phones were not, like they've done at Fen, you couldn't access your phone during the school day? Do you think the same thing would happen that happened at Fen, where kids wouldn't feel like they were missing out because nobody had access to their phones and to social media?
Yeah.
Yeah, no choice, no problem. I like that. Somebody write that down.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, sometimes I'll be out with friends and we'll like make a phone stack or something because it's even noticeable just with us that we're kind of lacking human connection and we're all with each other, but if you're like seeing notifications and somewhat not completely in the present moment, it sort of take away for your experience. And there's definitely like a balance to have a little bit of each. But yeah.
Great. Okay. What do I tell my tween who's begging me for an iWatch? iWatches versus smartphones. What do you think? Does anybody want to?
I can take a cut at that.
Yeah.
I think a tween is old enough to be able to articulate the goal. And I think that's the logical place to start, is to engage in a conversation about what's the purpose, what are you looking to gain by that, and then depending on what that is, I think deciding what to do from there. And we talked a little bit about it in some general terms earlier. I mean, some of this is just appeal work, right? It's heightening the awareness, it's appealing to the best judgment, and giving them some latitude to learn and grow and develop and feel connected and develop confidence and independence, but at the same time, the training wheels still need to be on, I believe. And that really comes in the form of that oversight. So I think establishing what's the point, and then deciding from there, and if the decision is made, I think keeping some of those checks and balances in place really makes sense. Some of the most challenging things I think that can arise on social media are statements that will be made or postings that will be made in some of the group chat setting. I think that's sort of some of the most dangerous way to hold ground for problems. Students this age very, very rarely would do what they did if it was just them, or just them and maybe one other person, but we would group together. And so this is just a little piece of advice. If your children are on group chats, big giant group chats, those can be very fertile ground for some really unfortunate situations. And thankfully, a lot of the folks on group chats are what I call passengers. They're on it, they're reading it, but they're not commenting. But the 1, 2, or 3 students that are often playing to the crowd and making decisions that are hard to come back from, and sometimes untenable for school communities. I know we've managed a small amount of those over the years, but we have managed them, and they've resulted in really difficult decisions. And so those kinds of group settings where there's strength in numbers and there's a chance to sort of flex a little bit are really dangerous kind of places. There's another site that you may know a little more about this than I think it's called Yik Yak. Is that right? everyone. It's a site where I believe you can post anything, but it disappears in a matter of, I want to say, 30 seconds or less, and there's no footprint. And that's a tough one. That's a tough one because you've got this open platform for a really short amount of time to really tee off, and then it goes away.
Sorry,
So, pardon me?
what's it called?
Yik Yak, because Y-A-K, Y-A-K, Y-I-K, Yik Yak. Has anyone heard of it?
Sounds like Snapchat.
It's still around. So, don't let anyone you love and know have anything to do with that.
Well, it's like kids were in high school, and specifically at this resource, the goal was to go and see negative things. They really just really
Yeah.
destructive.
It's still around, and then it disappears. This little timer on it just goes away in like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. It's not long, but so that is.
Well, speaking of disappearing, I will just, assuming everybody has this fact, but they didn't know, it looks as though Snapchat disappears immediately, or it isn't, they say it's not, so it doesn't stay around, that the police can access Snapchat to choose after the message was sent, and I think that's a really helpful piece of information to share with your tweens and teens.
And they have, and they
Yeah.
will. Yeah. There was a question, and on that topic, there was a question about how do you strike a balance between checking your kids' phones and letting them have developmentally appropriate amount of privacy, and develop their own private lives. And I kind of wanted to add to that too, that one thing that I've always done with my kids, and I was talking about this today, is we have the no trouble bubble. Did Jenny leave? We were talking about, oh, she just left. Yeah, we were talking about the no trouble bubble today. And I have it with my nieces and nephews, I call it the Auntie A no trouble bubble. And I say to my kids, like, this is our no trouble bubble. If anything, if you see anything online that's concerns you or is bad or you're worried about, or if you do anything online that you made a mistake about, you can always come and talk, and it goes beyond just online behavior. You can always come and talk to me, and I will maintain a straight face. I will not get angry, and I will listen to what you have to say, and we will figure it out together. And I think that's a really important message to send to kids, because when they're in middle school, and this has happened with my daughter who's 12, they will see stuff on texting that will concern them, and if they feel they can come to you to talk to you about it, they will, and you can figure out a plan together, whether it's leaving that group chat or deleting it or whatever. So I think that that's a really important conversation to have with your kids. And around the privacy thing, one thing that we say to kids, or we say to parents when they write the family media plan and they're writing in there that I will be checking your phone, is that what you're really looking for is destructive and dangerous content. You're not looking to nitpick the silly, 6'7" skippy toilet and all this other, silly stuff that kids say, but what you're really looking for is this destructive or is this dangerous behavior? And even encouraging them that if there is something that is too big to handle, that you are to come to me and we will figure it out together. And that's going to be a skill that is going to last with them into the high school and college years. That is super important when they're off on their own and at parties, and it's something, a really important conversation to have with your kids.
Well, I think of it developmentally, but I would say by the time your child's driving, you should not be checking their phone and reading their messages and looking at their social media. At that point, when they're about to be entering the great big world, whether they're going away to college or using that year or going off to work, whatever you're going to do, but at that point, you want the kids to be able to be out there for the social media world. That's why all of the boundaries earlier on are so important, because the goal is to set them up to be successful independent kids.
Right, so doing all of that in middle school, you're checking the text messages and you're talking about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And then as they're getting into high school, they're hopefully managing on their own because you've had those conversations. And they also feel comfortable coming to you and saying, oh my God, something really bad has happened on social media or on texting or at a party or whatever, and you can help them work through that. Because the worst thing that can happen is kids get themselves into situations and they feel like they have no one to go to, and that's when the real harm happens. All right. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. Phone-free schools are great, but what about one-to-one school devices and the amount of screen time they get in schools and the gamification of learning?
Yeah, great question. So all of our students are in possession of school-issued iPads. They're stripped of all non-educational apps. And our classes are 60 minutes long at 10, which is a little bit longer than most. And so that allows our faculty members to use a variety of modalities. And so through a 60-minute class, our students are not exposed to technology for the entirety of that class, maybe 15 or 20 minutes of that. And then it might be a reverse classroom, it might be some other traditional or non-traditional approach. We're trying to do more with good old-fashioned pencils and paper because students can't pen, their penmanship's horrible, they can't write anymore, they can't sign their name. We all used to learn to sign our names. They're sure you can sign your name, but maybe not. But yeah, no, I don't think there's not many schools out there, there aren't many schools out there that are completely tech-free. I don't believe that that's the philosophy, and I'm a moderate, I guess is what I want to say. I think usage of it in moderation is a smart, logical approach, and so that's how we employ it. So our students do have the iPads, and yes, there is time spent on those. They're stripped of all the foolishness and games and things like that. They're used for educational purposes only, but we're also working with our faculty to make sure they're not leaning too much on it. We don't want them on screens all the time.
What about
it's a hard balance.
What about YouTube at 10?
For
Is YouTube blocked, or how do you guys manage that?
It is blocked for, are there any fanboys in the crowd? There were, maybe they went home and finished their homework. That's a really good question. I'm not sure there's a clean line on that one. I think it's open, to be honest. I think it's open. And there's a situation where, we have to trust our students. We aim to trust our students. If the teacher is talking, that they're not, sneakily listening, watching a YouTube video. Is it perfect and foolproof? No, that nothing is. But so that is an open loop that you need to work on.
I have some ideas for you.
All right.
You want to talk about that? No, not here. Tomorrow, we're going to have a conversation about blocking YouTube. And I know I talked about this a little bit at the last event that we had, but YouTube can be blocked and still accessed. But you guys, you don't use Google Classroom now, do you?
I think
It's not like, oh, it's Google Classroom, okay.
It is, yeah.
So YouTube can be blocked, and teachers can embed content into Google Classroom so that students can watch a video, but they can't navigate away from it. And we're working on that in Concord. It's just taking some time. So if anybody is interested in working on that with me, you just shoot me an email. You don't know how to get in touch with me. And we're gonna talk to some people and make it happen. Get YouTube blocked. We're gonna get it blocked at Willard too. Just had a question about that. I don't know where my buddy is, but let's see, what else did he say? There are workarounds for blocked websites in schools.
Yeah.
Do you know this?
I
If the website you want to access is, for example, Roblox, you can search for a specific game on the website that you want to access and it works.
I'm sure that's true.
There's no question. This is telling you that.
We're well aware, our technology department is considered, so we have 3 full-time employees in our tech department, and they are really doing the sort of responders to setting up all the iPads and all the equipment to avoid those kinds of things. But here again, we have values in our school, we have expectations, we make those values and those expectations clear. And if a student is in violation of our, what we call our respectful or acceptable use agreement, then there are consequences for that. And so I'm sure it happens. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we said otherwise. But we continue to appeal and we address it when there's a violation and we take it very, very seriously. Workarounds on all those things. It's a solution to every problem. And it's hard when the students are a little more proficient than the adults. I mean, we didn't grow up as close to it. And so thankfully we have some incredibly well-trained and one in particular young member of our tech department who can keep up.
That's awesome.
Play good defense.
We had a question that was submitted online, online, I guess, when somebody registered, around how can we grant safe access to technological tools like chat, podcasts, and meditations without giving kids access to the more addictive and dangerous apps. We kind of talked a little bit about that and scaffolding and giving kids access slowly through the middle school years into high school. I think the parental controls on Apple are great. You can go in there and you can turn off the App Store, you can disable the internet browser, you can set up downtime, you can set up screen limits. So if you just go in there and mess around with those controls, it's pretty easy to block stuff. And then just to talk about what are the apps, to Derek's point, what are the apps that you want, the kid wants, and why? And can we solve that problem using something else? And if not, then let's set some parameters around downloading it. And then we had one other question about, and this kind of goes back to regarding no phones till driver's license, which is what Jean Tiny says. What do you say to kids who grow up in an urban environment and use public transportation or may not have as much parental supervision, particularly those from lower socioeconomic status or whose guardians work afternoon evening shifts, about having phones, their communication?
Well, if that's a major child, that can be a phone that doesn't have access to the internet, right? It can be, or a phone that doesn't have social media. It can be like a gap phone where they can text with that parent, they can call with that parent, and maybe with a grandparent or with somebody else, but if they don't need to have the ability to access Snapchat, they're 11 years old, even if they have a parent who's going to be at work with them in school.
All right, last question. If our community could take one practical step this year to help kids thrive in a tech-driven world, what would you recommend? Who wants to go first?
Phone-free schools.
Phone-free schools, okay? Like real phone-free schools. We're not talking keep your phone in your backpack, right?
And I'm not talking making teachers when you said that the teachers
Yes.
have to be in charge. That's not fair to teachers. To
Yeah.
make them feel unsafe, put them in charge.
I agree.
We're already there, so.
I know. What about you? What else? What can we help? What can we do? One practical step.
I guess just have a hard conversation with your child. We included tend to avoid that. We're busy. It's difficult to make those interactions positive. They can sometimes take on kind of an adversarial, negative tone. But you lean into the discomfort. Get comfortable with the discomfort of having those conversations with your child. They're so important. And don't forget, you are the ones that are in control. You are the parent, and we all want our children. We want our children to stay communicating with us, and when the tension and the hostility sets in, then the gap tends to set in a little bit as well. But they will know you love them, and they will know why you're coming at it the way that you are. But be willing to have those hard conversations, and I think if you are, I believe your home will function in a more lasting way, and I think the sort of relationship between your child's school and your family will do the same. And so that would be my piece of advice: is be willing to take that on and don't shy away from it.
Your turn.
Yeah, I would say something very defining my own relationship with social media.
Yes.
So this topic is serious, right? And it's really easy to catastrophize. We've all heard really frightening stories, real stories about things that have happened to kids. And so I think what happens, what I see happen to families in my practice is, the fear mechanism kicks in, and that's fight, flight, or freeze, right? So if you're somebody that goes towards fight, maybe that means that every time your child's on a device, you're having these conflicts because you panic and you think, oh no, something bad could happen. And that rarely is productive. It's easy to have that kind of just adversarial relationship about focus. The other thing I see happen is the flight or freeze, and parents kind of shutting down because they feel like it's too overwhelming, I'm not sure how to do this, or I don't want to get into disagreement with my child because that feels like I don't want to alienate them, but the relationship's too important, and so then it's hard for parents to get involved. So I think an event like this, where you can come together as a community, have a conversation, ask questions, can really help, hopefully help you as parents be able to say, okay, so I get into that fight, please, fight or freeze moment, and then just put my hand on my chest, take a deep breath. This isn't actually an emergency. Everything's okay. What are the things that I learned when I went to that panel? Slow yourself down and then try to approach this slowly and calmly. And if you need to step away from the conversation, it's okay. Say to your child, I didn't break this, gave you too much feet, come back to it. And I think by being genuine in that way, you'll build that trust that Lily said she got with her parents, which is so important.
I would also add too, with my kids, I am vulnerable with them. So I will just flat out say to them, this scares me, and I love you so much, and I don't want anything bad to happen to you, and I'm sure nothing, I'm not saying something bad is going to happen to you, but I just worry about you because I love you so much. And I think that when you say that to your child and you say that to yourself, instead of like freaking out, oh my God, I have to fix this right now. If you're just acknowledging and being vulnerable and acknowledging the love that you have for your child, they're gonna feel it. And my kids, they just like roll their eyes at me all the time. My oldest is 19, like she's going to college. She's a high school senior. She went to a college party with her summer friend the other day. I was like, oh my God, I know, just please make sure you dress well and be safe and don't, take any drinks from any strangers and just cover, and she knows like I'm freaking out because I love her. And she's like, okay, Mom, like don't worry, it'll be fine. But we've gotten to the point where we're at that point in our relationship because I've been vulnerable with her, and she knows that all of my fears and worries are because I love her so much. And so if you can build that, I don't know if you can build that type of relationship with your kid. I don't know if that's good or bad, I don't know, but being vulnerable.
One other thing that occurs to me is just trying to be mindful of how much your children are watching and so model for them. And I myself am guilty of being on my phone too often, and sometimes it's work, but still. This is not an unusual scene for families. You'll be all together watching a movie, and all five of you will be on your phones, kind of thing. That we all fall into that, but I think being mindful of not doing that, and you're asking your child to be aware of certain things, modeling it, so that you can say, I'm doing it too. I think is a really important step.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's been thank you, Concord Carlisle, Adult Continuing Education, I'm going to set that backwards, for community education, and all of the PTGs, the Fenn School, Emerson Health, and the Concord Ed Fund, who all contributed to the funding of this series. So thank you so much, and we'll get to talk from us for recording tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Everybody, check out the